Hi, everyone. As you can see, I'm not Pedro. Pedro has a family issue, and I'm replacing him today. I'm Tiago Conde. I work at Informa almost 10 years, and I'm the sales coordinator for value-added solutions, mainly compliance, ESG solutions, credit risk. Mainly we use data. So today I will do an overview regarding the startups ecosystem in Portugal with a special focus in Algarve's region. First of all, I would like to talk a little bit about Informa. Please raise your hand if you never heard talk about Informa or Dun & Bradstreet. Okay, interesting. So we are market leaders in Portugal regarding business information. Informa belongs to Informa Spain. We are part of the group SES, insurance credit risk company. And we have more than 119 years in Portugal. So a lot of experience with business data. 131 employees between Lisbon and Oporto office, and 20 million revenue in the last year. We have more than 15,000 clients in Portugal, including Algarve, of course. We mainly work with public and official sources to collect the data that we use to create our database. We have full coverage of the Portuguese market. So any entity, active entity or not active, we have it in our database. We have all the financial statements of the Portuguese companies. We have it available in our database, and we include in our products. And we do it in daily monitoring with thousands of updates in a daily basis. We also belong to the worldwide network of Dun & Bradstreet, so we are an exclusive partner for Portugal and other regions where Informa is present, as in Spain or Colombia. And we have access to the worldwide network and the international database with more than 600 million companies with all the data available. So when we start talking about startup companies, it's important to explain how we identify them. So we use some criteria like size and age. So we consider they must have less than 10 years, less than 250 employees, and less than 50 million of turnover. But they should also consider one of the two conditions regarding funding and recognition or type of activity. And should consider, they should recognize by HANI in the practice of R&D activities or knowledge that operates in the technology sector recognition, at least one venture capital company or capital fund or a partner business angel vehicle that are in their shareholders structure, or they have received an investment from Banco de Fomento. Or on the other side, they have research and development expenses or patents, or they are in they received funds in R&D or technology development and innovation, or they are in the activity codes regarding high and medium high technology sector. So now we understand what we consider a startup. So let's see how is the Portuguese market. So we have more than 5,000 companies with these characteristics. They represent 1% of the total of active companies in Portugal, with 2,868 million in total turnover, 28,000 the number of employees. 5 is the average of the employees per company, and the average of monthly wage is 2,200. and the sales for international markets is 1,571 millions. As you can see, if we look for the number of entities with these characteristics in the total market, Portuguese market, in the last 3 years, we see a significant growth, 2 digits, interesting, 11%. And if we look to the distribution, considering the regions, NUTS 2, we have the biggest representation in Greater Lisbon, is obvious. Then in the north of Portugal, including Oporto, and then the center of Portugal. And if we look at the distribution of the employment, we get a similar distribution considering those regions. Then if we start looking for the Algarve startups ecosystem, in this case, we are still looking for the overall market, but looking for the specific region Algarve. We had a growth last year of 0.5%, but if you look for the first 9 months of this year, we are decreasing almost 4% of the number of births of new entities in general. If we look to other regions of Portugal, they have significant growth in general companies. When we start looking for the tech companies, we get different results, especially when we look to Algarve. In a decade, we see that the number tripled. And this is very interesting, but it's going a different way of the general market in Algarve. And this is our estimation for the end of 2025. So how is the ecosystem in Algarve, startup ecosystem? We have 115 companies only. They represent 0.4 of the active companies in Algarve. They represent 25 million of turnover, only 0.9 of whole startup turnover in Portugal. They have 365 employees. The average year of the employees per company is 3 employees. And interesting, the average monthly wage is 1,300 euros per month, significant lower than that we saw in the general market, less 40%, but it's 20% more than the average of other companies in Algarve. So this is interesting numbers. Then regarding the international sales, we have 13 million euros to international markets. So the evolution of the ecosystem in Algarve, and please consider here 22, we have also a growth of 2 digits. We are considering entries and exits, and the reasons of the exits can be different. So we can consider companies that are no longer active, or they already have 10 years of existence, or they become large companies, or they are no longer tech companies. So they are not considered in the last number of 24. When we look for the distribution by municipalities in Algarve, we get a number of 1/3 of the companies in Faro, considering the number of entities. But when we look for the turnover, we get almost half of the value in Faro. And we have a similar profile, but Algarve has a special focus with better representation in high-tech technologies industries. So this is interesting and can make a difference in the future. Also, when we look for the size of the companies considering the number of employees and thinking about the number of the companies, micro companies has a huge representation on the market. And this happens in Algarve or in the Portugal overview, but it's worse in Algarve. And it's interesting to see how they will lose representation when we start looking to turnover or the employment. And if you consider the medium in red, the median companies, with just 1% of companies, they represent 16% of the total turnover and 20% of the total of employment. So we need to create bigger companies to create value in our region. This is very important to happen. And we see the same with different numbers, but we see the same in the Portuguese overview. When we look to external markets, considering the number of entities that are exporting, it's interesting to see also that in Algarve, companies are more exposed to international markets. This is very interesting, and I think it's good. And it reveals also one thing, that when we compare startups in Algarve with the rest of the companies in Algarve, we see a wider gap, considering that we have more representation of companies in startups ecosystem with international relations. This is important I think, to the future and the projects, and to get bigger companies. As we see, it's very important to follow that path. Then, looking to the growth in those years, we see that Algarve companies in Algarve are growing faster in turnover and also in the number of employees. Maybe the slide that we saw before is an explanation for this. This is also very interesting. Then, introducing here some ratings that we create in Informa. Financial resilience is an indicator that indicates the financial strength capacity of one specific company, comparing to the market where or the sector where it's included. How can face critical events like in the short term, like COVID, for instance, a good example. And what we see, it's in general, startups are not prepared for that. I think that's normal. They are not financially well structured. They are starting. They are putting everything in the growth of the business. They are developing. So I think this is normal, and it happens in the Portuguese market in general, but also in Algarve. But it's worse in Algarve in this case, because we have 34% with minimum financial resilience. But if we look to other indicators, this failure risk, it's the probability of an entity cease activity without paying to their suppliers in the following 12 months. And in this case, we have good numbers for startups. And this is a good message for investors, because we can say that they are prepared for the next year. This is an important message, and I think will help startups achieve their targets of growth. So finally, and a kind of conclusion, we just want to share our opinion regarding Algarve and how we see it as an opportunity, knowing how the ecosystem is created, And considering all this advantage of this region that we always relate to Algarve, but when we consider the startup ecosystem, of course, it's for investors, for entrepreneurs, a perfect ecosystem to create and growth. So thank you very much for your attention and have a nice day.